Well, welcome to today's episode. I am so excited about this. This one's going to be fun. As we wrap up season 5, I thought it would be interesting to invite a couple of mamas in that I've discipled and walked with over their journey through the wild, wild west of education. We have been talking about pop culture parenting for in and out throughout this entire season. And what I mean by that is just parents who feel the pressure to just go with the flow. Well, these are a couple of parents who have absolutely stepped out, are not going with the flow, and have started something on their own. Pop culture parenting kind of woos us into believing cultural lies, and they become just the norm. But here's the one lie that I think parents lean into probably the most when it comes to education. Is that there is one way, there is one philosophy, there is one environment, there is one style of education. Now, we know that there's not one style of student. There's not all of our children are different from each other. There's not one way to do this. And for us to believe that there's only one way to do it, it keeps us trapped. There is nothing that could be further from the truth. There are multiple ways to do it. Pods are just one of them. So I'm going to talk about that in just a second. But the bottom line is there are a lot of different shapes and sizes and ways to do this. And what's happening in culture is sort of an explosion of entrepreneurial educational options. We are finding that parents are breaking free from the mindsets they've had, and they're finding freedom in new ways to do education. So you've heard a lot about education throughout this season, including some incredible opportunities and innovation, both in K-12 and in higher ed, things that maybe your family wants to be a part of. You've also heard some stories about how culture is shaping our children, really whether it's technology in or out of the classroom. We're starting to dive into what is AI going to do when it hits not just social media and screens, but the classroom. We've talked about the hypersexualization of our children over and over and over again. It's not going anywhere. So it's shaping our children. And then we've talked about gender ideology. This is something that is just rampant in our culture. So for many people who have experienced some of these culture-shaping ideas that they're not fond of, over the years, I've been asked several times because we stepped out and did something different 15 years ago. I've been asked over and over and over, will you just create a school in the box so we can multiply and do what you did? And while that it's an option, I just think at this point, there's so many people that are doing that so well. And you've heard from some of them this season. Justin with the Academy at District Church, I mean, they are offering their playbook. He's willing to hand that over. If that's something that stirs you, please get in touch with them. Then we had Turning Point on, and I keep going back, like how many times did they say this is free? Turning Point's been on. In previous seasons, we've had Equip 210 on. That's a great model. We've had Apogee on. That's a great model. You sort of have to know what you're looking for. And then if you're really thinking about homeschooling, someone like Classical Learner that we had on a couple of seasons ago that are helping with incredible online resources, they can help you get started in that. We've had Home Tribe on, and they can really help you connect with people across the country that are doing amazing things. So I really feel like there's a lot of resources. There are a lot of resources to help you start really the traditional school or homeschool your own children. I then felt really more compelled to do something a little bit different than either of those. So as I've walked with a lot of people, I've made a decision in this past year to partner with a couple of friends to offer something to parents. This is great for teachers. This is great for churches. It's great for entrepreneurs who are really intrigued and they're ready to create something simple but powerful in a learning environment for like-minded families by creating what we call a pod. We've got something called the Pod Packet. We're going to talk about it today. But I'm excited really to invite you in to hear a couple of moms talk about their journey and how they're using it. Before we do that, you probably want to know, what is a pod? There's so many terms being thrown around. Well, a pod, if you think about the term micro school, that's usually a school of under 100 students, or maybe some of them even reach 500, and they're smaller schools. But a pod is a little bit different than that. A pod is what we kind of define it by 3 to 12 students. It could be all the same age. It could be 2 or 3 families. It could be a couple of grades together. But a pod is when some families come together, bring their kids together, and either a parent or a group of parents lead that charge, or they hire a teacher. With all the school choice that's happening out there and the funding following the students, pods are an amazing opportunity, not only for families, but for teachers. So I've asked one of the co-creators of the pod packet to come on with me. I think most of you know that I have a ministry called the Beacon Parent. And Lauren has been a part. She's been the COO. She's now chairman of the board. But she has started a pod for her oldest daughter. And I want her to help share her experience. She's helped put this pod packet together. And then secondly, I actually met someone at a Think Summit a couple of years ago. She came to a breakout to hear about some ideas in education and went home and has really been moved to start something in her own community. The story's fascinating. And their moms, just like I was, education was not their background. In fact, they had varied experiences in education, but they stepped out and they've put something together. And I want you to hear how it's going. Now, here's why I think that this conversation is so important. I think parents are ready. I think they're stirred. I think they're intrigued with new things. They've heard different terms. They're ready to step out. And frankly, there are ways to step out and take action. I know that feeling when you're like, I think there's a better way to do it and I'm going to act on it. There are just better ways and easier ways maybe to do it than how I launched out. And so you don't have to take on a whole school if that's not your background. That's not necessary. You don't have to create an environment for half the town. You can create a wonderful atmosphere and a community for just your children and some like-minded families. Keep it simple. Be focused, be purposeful, and stay small. And the great thing about this is, if it really takes off, then you can grow. It can grow from a pod to a microschool. It could grow into a co-op. It could even grow into a hybrid school or a full-time school. If you heard the conversation with Jennifer Burns of Turning Point, that's exactly what happened to her. A little co-op turned into a good-sized school that has been going for years, and now she's helping launch these all over the nation. So whether it's small or you really take on a massive, massive project, there's room for everybody. So what I want you to hear and what I'm hoping you will really embrace is that there is not one and never has been only one way to do education. That's just simply not true. What fits your family? And then also trusting that if you're stirred, God's going to equip you to do it. There are all types of models. You can do this. Education is really not about the environment. It's ultimately about the formation of young minds and worldviews. And what that means is it's ultimately about lives and futures. We have the ability as parents, as pastors, as educators who believe in a biblical worldview to really inspire the next generation and to pass the torch of faith through educational environments. So I want you to hear from a couple of people that are doing it. We're going to have just a friendly talk. They're going to tell you what's hard about it. They're going to tell you why they did what they did. They're going to give you the information that might just get you over the hump in this new season. We're coming into admission season for schools. It's already time to start thinking about what that next school year is going to look like. So I want to wrap this season up with some inspiration and some motivation to really open your mind and open your eyes to some really cool things and opportunities that are out there. And just maybe you'll be the one that leads the charge. So let's lean in and be informed. Well, hey, y'all. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, this is fun. I just did the intro. I'm like, this is so fun to have some friends on and to just chat about what we're doing and what we've kind of done together. And so I want to start, we're going to get into what is a pod and all the things, the details. But let's start with Lauren. If y'all would both just give a little bit of background about you, your families, age and stage of your families, and then just your personal background in education, because I don't think either one of you all saw this coming. So let's just get a little bit of background.
Amazing. So I have been married almost 11 years. We have 4 daughters. My girls range from 1 to almost 14. So I am in a lot of ages and stages right now. So I have 1, 7, 9, and 13.
Okay.
I went to public school my whole life. So I went to public school the same. I left for like a brief stint when we moved, but essentially outside of that 1 year, I went to the same public school from kindergarten through 12th grade.
Okay.
Yep.
So
Yes.
super traditional background, all the
Yeah.
things. Okay. How about you,
Yep.
Brandy?
Yeah, pretty similar to Lauren. Our kids are spaced a little differently, but John and I, my husband and I, we've been married almost 20 years now, and we started kids a little later in life, but we have currently a little boy who's 5 and will be a kindergartner in the fall, a little boy who's 9 will be a third grader, and then I have a daughter who is 12 and she will be an incoming sixth grader. And very similar to Lauren, I grew up in traditional public school, very large schools. I grew up in the big city, close to Denver, Colorado, and I think there were 2,500 in the school. We currently live in a very small rural community out in the middle of northeastern Colorado, and I think there might be 1,500 total in the district. So it's
Okay.
Very cool.
significantly different. Yeah.
And Lauren, where are you? Like, let everybody know kind of the
Yeah.
atmosphere, because I think that that's an important thing. Like, this is
Yeah.
the two totally different environments, doing similar things. But where are you?
Yeah. So and it's funny when you said your school is so big. Funnily enough, so I still live where I was born and raised, essentially. So I was born and raised in Beaufort, Georgia. I still live in Georgia, about 30 minutes outside of Beaufort. But at the time, Beaufort has now blown up. It's a
Mhm.
pretty large public school. But at the time, it was still very small town, and I graduated with like 100 people in my class.
In your public
Uh-huh.
school?
In the public school. Yeah.
So that's kind of crazy how y'all just flip
Mhm.
flopped. Well, the reason I wanted to sort of start there is because here's my guess. Well, I know both of you, so I don't have to guess. But I don't think y'all woke up dreaming one day about, man, I can't wait to launch into non traditional education. I've wanted to do this my whole life. I've been thinking about it. So
No.
tell us a little bit about just let's just not specifically what you're doing, but just the journey into even the idea of doing something non-traditional, if you would. I do want to get into what your pods look like and what a pod is, but just a little more broad. Like, how in the world did you go from I've done public school, it worked great for me, to where you are? And we'll start with Lauren, and then Brandy will jump over, and
Okay,
feel free
great.
to banter.
Yeah. So it's interesting. My oldest daughter actually started at Buford in public school. I was still living in the same town and kind of following the same patterns. And um, Buford is great. I mean, again, to leave, and my whole family's still there. So to leave, it was crazy because it really is one of the most sought out school systems
It
in
is,
Georgia.
yes.
If not probably like the Southeast, to be honest with you. And so they thought it was crazy, that I was leaving. But I just knew, first of all, it had gotten so big. And also, I just was starting to just walk such a different journey in my faith and with the Lord. And so I had this perspective shift, my husband and I, that, we wanted faith to be first and education to be second. There was such a shift that wasn't the priority anymore, the top school and the top education and the top sports. And so as that started to shift in our heart, we went from public school, then she went to a private Christian school, a private covenant Christian school. So we did that next and we loved it. But I just started seeing some holes, and we were moving at the time to where we live now. And it was a long commute just to continue to take her there. But I didn't know this area well enough yet to say, oh, I'm going to pick a school. And early on, when she was going into kindergarten, it's like the Lord had already started planting the seeds. I went and actually, we did like an open house at a school that Suzanne, formerly owned. And I just so much birthed in me at that
Hmm.
meeting and was so exciting. But the school was really far away from where we were living. So I feel like early on, the Lord had kind of already started planting seeds of hybrid schools and potentially homeschool. And I'm so grateful that I had one cousin that kind of, marched ahead and pioneered the way of just kind of setting a different example for me. She has 5 kids and they all started homeschooling. from a young age. And so I got to watch that, and it
Yeah.
gave me courage because I really didn't grow up around any of that. So when we moved, I said, why not bring her home to homeschool for, a year or two until we get settled in this new community and figure out where we want to be.
Hey,
And that's
Lauren,
when we
out of curiosity, how old was she when you did that?
Yeah, that's great. So we moved out here when she was going into, so she's eighth now, last year, seventh, sixth, like
That's
right
yeah.
around fourth,
There's
fifth
so many
grade.
commonalities. I had a cousin also homeschooling ahead of us, so she was encouraging me, and then same age for my daughter to pull her as you. So that's really interesting. Yeah.
And
Interesting.
you pulled her at the same age?
Hmm.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Yeah, and it does, like, to see other people do it, Brandy, I'm sure you felt this
Hmm.
way. To see the fruit, like her
Hmm.
kid, like her oldest is 18 now. So they're ahead, and like they were just such great kids, and there was such a difference in their family, and they weren't weird, none of that. I feel like
Amen.
all that box is kind of blown up now. Like people aren't considered the weird homeschoolers anymore. But back then it was different. It was different. And so, yeah, so that was such a sweet time. Brought her home, did classical conversations.
Hmm.
And then as she approached sixth grade, she was ready. She was ready to be back in social. So then we went to a very tiny, little tiny Christian school here at our church. I think there's like 50 kids there this year, a little over 50 kids. She finished her sixth grade year there, and then the journey started with the pod. But
Okay.
she was my first, right? We kind of paved the
Wonderful.
way with
Yeah.
her. So
Yeah.
after her, the littles have followed in suit. They've always been in a tiny little small Christian school with very, very few kids. And they've all kind of done that homeschool model curriculum. So we've kind of stayed on that journey ever since.
Awesome. Okay, so Brandy, so some similarities, but is there anything else? Like, tell us a little bit about your journey,
Sure.
just
Yeah. It
in the area that you're in, and your
so
personal journey.
yeah, so many commonalities, Lauren. I love it. It's encouraging to be like, I'm not the only one. Um, so yeah, we moved into this very small town. My husband grew up here, and I remember thinking, what are the schools like? And we didn't even have children yet. And so I would be in the kitchen thinking, Lord, what are we going to do about school when it's time for school? But we still hadn't had children. So grew up in a really cool company, learned a strategic planning process through that company, and ended up consulting for other companies, but also school districts when I left this company. Still didn't have children, but now I'm consulting, trying to start a family, and I'm working with school districts, and I'm just seeing the brokenness of the school
Interesting.
district
Yeah.
model. Yeah, just from a high level, right? Don't even have kids involved, just trying to understand like how do school districts work? What is the national spectrum of education? There's a lot of brokenness. How do we fix this? So kind of being exposed to that. Then we have children, have a daughter a couple years old, thinking about preschool. And there's some private preschools at the churches in town, but we only have one public school in town, and there's no private schools in our little town. There's a couple down the road. And so up in the night praying, right? One of those moments, and just clearly hear God say, you are going to start a school. Well, that's very overwhelming. I have a 2-year old. I don't know what that means. And so I just asked back, what's the first step? And he says, join the school board. And I go, that's definitely you because that is nothing I would
That
ever
doesn't make
do.
sense.
so, kind of fast forward, I end up on the school board through a whole cool God story. Have a 3-year old, still choose to put my child in private school while I'm on the public school board, and journeys like this clear up until she gets to about third grade, and my son is in kindergarten. And then through our kindergarten and third grade year, things are just and keep in mind we live in a very conservative town. We are fighting against all the crazy
All
colorado
of it.
laws. Like we are standing up for very like strong biblical truths. The board is very backed by the Lord. I mean, our superintendent right now is a strong follower of Jesus. So we're not even in the midst of the chaos, what I would say we're seeing across the nation necessarily, because we're still holding true to tradition and values and all the good things that we want our community to be raised up in. However, my kids are still lacking when it comes to like rigor. And then back to you, Lauren,
Mhm.
like the faith component. I've got my preschooler coming home who's saying, well, we can't really talk about God at the table. And I've got my kindergartner who's like, Mom, there's all these kids with behavioral issues, and I'm trying to be kind, but they're hitting, and so the stories go on. But through that process, the Lord says, Brandy, it's your turn to homeschool. And I pushed back. I said, Well, for one, I'm on the school board, right? Like you see that, right? And for
It
two,
was
I
your
don't know.
idea,
Yeah,
right?
I don't know about homeschool. That sounds not up my alley. So a lot of prayer, a lot of crying. I said, all right, I will do it. So for 1 year, we're going to commit to this homeschool. And I remember I was like, 1 year, and I'm putting him back. I am not, I will do what he says. I will be obedient. And then I'm done. So go through that year, comes to last spring. And I said, Lord, I am done. We got a new superintendent. She loves you. The board is strong. We're moving in the right direction as a district. I'm going to put mine back in. And he clearly came to me about a week later and said, I hear you and you can do that, but I really do need you to launch your school. And I said, that's fine, but I need a teacher and I need a building and I need it soon. And within 2 weeks, I had a building and a teacher. And so it goes on from there, but that's kind of, I guess, the background of how I got
Yeah,
started.
yeah, and
Well,
I do want to
and
make a point before we kind of get into the pot. Laura, did you let me make this quick point,
yeah,
and
go
then
ahead.
I'll let you go. But I think it's really important for parents to hear this because I have been asked time and time again. And listen, if the Lord's asking you to do something, just do that, regardless of
Amen.
where it is, right?
Amen.
But I've been asked so many times, if all the Christians leave public school,
Mm-hmm.
who's going to be there? And first of all, I don't think that's what's going to happen. I mean, it's follow the Lord and what He has for your family, but I think it's really important, and you demonstrate something that I've said for the past, at least 5 years is. Who said anything about not participating in public school?
Mm-hmm.
But don't make the assumption that by participating in public school, it means that your kindergartner has to go. I mean, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
but my husband went to a school board meeting for the first time. I mean, nobody went to school board meetings, right? Nobody was aware. He stepped into a school board meeting for the first time when all of our kids were out of the nest
Yeah.
because it's something that's happening culturally. It's something that's happening to God's children. They're all God's children. Like, we still have an invested interest in what's happening in all schools.
Yeah.
But to lump that all together is there's only one way to do this, and it's this way. And like really being in tune with what the Lord's asking you to do in the season that He's asking you to do. And I think you make an important point because you're still serving on the school board. Am I right? You're still on?
Yes, and that has been so beautiful. I mean, if we fast forward another year after that story I just finished, we've got our new superintendent who has a heart for the homeschool communities. We were
Mm-hmm.
able to launch an aerospace camp for all homeschool families for this school year, but our school district is hosting that. So our homeschool families will be going into this public school setting to be able to participate in this homeschool aeronautical camp. I guess it's 1 day a week, basically. And then we were also able to get that camp to then be used for the public school kids, because as a board member I was like, this is a great curriculum and program for all kids. It doesn't have to be just homeschool families. So I was able to make that connection between the
That's
aerospace
incredible.
people and the public school people to then offer it not only to homeschool families, which we'll be a part of, but also for public school kids. So there is some synergies there. And I think, Lauren, back to your point, it sounds like Buford's gotten pretty big, but I think because we are so small, there's a lot of room for us to work together for the better good of the community. And of course, there's pockets of that, and there's always pockets of different folks inside of a community. But I just really start to see how God is possibly starting to orchestrate this tapestry together into this big, beautiful piece, and not just these components. And that part's actually really exciting to be able to
Very
have the
exciting.
relationships at the school board level with the district, but then also be able to be the feet on the ground with the homeschool moms to hear what their needs and voices
Yeah.
and concern is, right? So
That's
That's
awesome.
great.
yeah, it's a good
Lauren,
partnership.
did you have a
Yeah.
point that you
I
want
was
to
just going
make?
to add one thing that I think is so important for people to hear that I didn't say as part of my story, and you hit on it, and I'm the same as you. And Suzanne knows this about me. Like, when he told me to come home and homeschool, do you know like how hilarious that is? I mean, I I am so far, like for women out there that think like, oh, I work, or I'm not the nurturing homeschool
Mhm.
type, or I, me either, me
Yeah.
either. And I worked like very, very, very full time,
Yeah.
and there's so many options out there
Yeah.
now, which we'll talk about more. But just because you work full time, or just because you work part time, or just because you're not a stay at home mom, or if you are a stay at home mom, that doesn't mean you're excluded from homeschooling. Like if the Lord calls you to it, walk in obedience.
Mhm.
He will equip you and he will provide. And so I just love that part of your story because it was the same for me. It was the same for me. I was the last person that I ever thought that the Lord would say homeschool your kid.
Yeah. FYI, I said I'll never. And that's one of the things you just don't say to God. I'll never do that. It's really cool. I wish I had that in me, but
Yeah,
I'll never do that. I didn't even like
not
school.
me.
And it's
Yeah.
like, okay, well then that's who's gonna get now we're gonna open a school. Like,
Yeah.
okay, well that's a twist. So
Yeah.
no, I appreciate that. And I think so many people, I think the point that there are so many options and there's so many options that are affordable now, really, and school choice makes
Oh,
it so much easier in a lot of states, not in every state, but in a lot of states, the dollars are starting to follow the students, which makes it right. 10 students who are getting, $6,000 to $8,000 a piece, they're going to hire one teacher. I mean, it makes it doable, and it's a beautiful thing for teachers who are ready to maybe do something different or want the freedom to actually be able to creatively teach again. So let's get into a little bit about what I've described pods as 3 to 12 students. It then may grow past that or go into a micro school, but it can be as tiny as 3 to 12 students who are just walking with a teacher or teachers. One of them may be a parent, through the school year. But pods are often shaped around a specific idea. It could be all girls, all boys around something. So can we talk just a little bit, Lauren? I'll start with you on this one. But what does the pod look like, and why did you decide to do that? Because you've had some other options.
yeah. So the school at our church ends in sixth grade. And I toured a lot of amazing hybrid homeschools in our area that are really great options. And I just felt in my heart as I did that. And that's where we fully planned to be for high school. So like they were great options. Like I truly mean that. But I just felt like, Lord, like just the Lord had prompted, like, I want a little bit more time for discipleship. I want a little bit more time to really focus on the heart. I want a little bit more time to not go into the middle school madness of, especially the area we live in. It's a truly like a high wealth area. I didn't want to go in dealing with the extremely high end brand clothing and the makeup and just the focusing on worldly things, which is already so hard, right?
Yeah, it
And
is.
the Lord is so clear, like, be in the world, but not of the world. And so I just wanted to be able to shift our focus. And so for me, after seeing that, I was like, okay, Lord, what else? Because I don't want her to be fully homeschooled for middle school. Like I do want to prepare her for high school. I do want the socialization. She is very social. She wants to be around other girls. So another mom that her daughter was also in the same grade at our private Christian school here at our church, she was just kind of desiring the same thing. And the Lord did the rest. I mean, we sat down and we said, gosh, what would it look like to put together an all girls pod for middle school girls? At first, we were thinking seventh grade only, but the Lord just morphed it into sixth and seventh grade. So we are now into our second year. School starts on Monday, and we have seventh and eighth grade. We had 80% return enrollment. So we only had to add in 2 more people this year. We have 11 girls in our pod. So our pod's focus was girls only, middle school. We really wanted to incorporate life skills. That was a big deal for us. So and God had been so gracious where he had already placed a dear friend in my life a couple years before that her whole company, all she did was place teachers in homeschool families. So we got together with her and said, if we formed this pod, do you think you could service it? Could you provide the teachers? And she's like, I have dreamed of this. Yes. Yes, I would love to. And God did the rest. We started, I said to the other mom, I said, my background is in operations. I said, I will ops all of it. For us, we went pretty, because that's just sort of my personality. We went pretty structured. I'm like, I'll make the block schedule. I'll make the school calendar. I'll do the handbook. I will literally do every operational piece, the school supply list, the curriculum list. I'll communicate with the parents if you will find the people. And she did. We just started putting our feelers out. The friend that helped placed the teachers in the pod, started putting her fillers out. And next thing you know, we had 11 girls, and one of the moms in the pod, the Lord woke her up in the middle of the night and said, because we couldn't find a location yet, and he was like, have it here. She had a whole school in her basement already, an entire schoolhouse from when she had homeschooled her kids with a separate entrance and everything.
Awesome.
And so the rest is history.
Incredible, incredible. And it's gone so, 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 so well.
It's
And
been
the
really,
homeschools is a precious part about it, and just how you all have incorporated that and incorporated experts to come in. And
yes.
it's been really fun to watch. So Brandy, yours isn't all that different, but it's a little bit different. So what's the structure, the age, and it's sort of interesting because some of the ages changed since I've met you, and it's really fun. But tell us a little bit about the journey of the pod for
So
you.
back to tying into Lauren, what I love and what I keep hearing is that God is calling mothers.
Mhm.
Yes.
And it is moms, all kinds of moms. And I've been having, whether I'm at the county fair or at the grocery store or wherever, the racetrack, these moms are gravitating and saying, "What are you doing?" And I'm explaining it to them. They're like, "I'm getting a similar nudge. I'm getting a similar call."
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just
Gives me cold
curious, like,
chills.
Lord, what are we doing big picture, right? I'm always kind of a big picture, like, this is great,
Yeah.
it's happening in pockets. Like, what is God seeing overarching across our country? And what does that look like? And that gets me excited personally. But um we could go on that about a different time. But in
Yeah.
regards to pods, so yeah, very similar, Lauren. We started ours with one other family. I had two moms lined up, like, hey, so let me backtrack just a second. In the homeschool world, when I was homeschooling, I would go to co-op, I would go to, the group PE,
Mm-hmm.
whatever was happening in the community, and I was getting the same response from mothers of, I'm exhausted. I don't know if I'm doing enough. I don't know if I'm a good enough teacher. I don't know if I like this, but I don't want to send them back. I wish they had more community. I wish they had more time to be with other kids, right? Like besides just co-op. And so just kind of kept seeing this common thread. And then when I interviewed my own kids at the end of the year, I said, what did you like? What didn't you like? What would you change? They all said we loved it, but we wish there were other kids in the room to converse with, right? To
Mhm.
like debate with or hear their perspective on a story, or because they were kind of tired of each other. And I said, I get that. And so towards the end of that first year of homeschooling, I pulled a couple moms aside from co-op and said, hey, I think God's calling us to start a school or me to start a school. Are you interested? And they were like, yeah, if you find the teacher and the building, we're all in. So I did that. And 2 weeks later, a couple of them paused. They were like, oh, we're actually doing this. And I'm like, well, yeah, we said we were
I
going to
thought
do
we
it. Let's
talked
do
about
it.
this, right?
Yeah. So they paused and I said, that's okay. All in God's timing. Right. I said, that's all right. So built the school, had a teacher, and basically said, you might have my children. I don't know what God is doing, but I thought we would have more children and we just have my two. And she said, that's fine, because she was also feeling the call to homeschool, and which is so crazy. Both of my teachers now clearly heard the Lord say, you need to homeschool your own children. So both our teachers are homeschool. I mean, it's just like God is on the move.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so we launched the school. Then about a week before school started, a friend at the racetrack said, I love what you're doing. We're at the private school a couple towns over, or one town over. Can we come try it? I said, yeah, come do it with us for a week. We don't know what we're doing. If you like it, you can
Yeah.
stay. They tried it. They loved it. So we just had 3 kids in our pod. It was two second graders and a fifth grader that year.
Okay.
So that was all of last year. Had a great year. I had no parents to deal with except for the one mother. Her and I became great friends. She's very laid back like myself. We're both very entrepreneurial. We're both running companies for our husbands. Like back to your point, Lauren, anybody can do it because we have both had very full schedules. And so come spring, a few months ago, I had a few moms reach out, a couple moms from before that were excited to start and then kind of paused. They were all of a sudden like, I think we're ready now. I said, okay, great. Um, so had a handful of moms come, wanted to tour the school, wanted to see what it's about. And I thought, oh, maybe 50% of them will say yes, right? Like, I don't know. Because before I only got one other child besides my own, and they all said yes. So I remember in June, I was like, oh my gosh, we are going to have 15 children. Like, my building's not big enough for 15 children. Oh, and then on top of that too, Lauren, similar, I thought Ellie would just go back to kindergarten or back to sixth grade for middle school. So I was on the train of like, okay, we'll set the foundation K through 5. We'll get this really good identity in Christ, and then we'll throw them into middle school, which I was a little hesitant for, because
Yeah.
middle school is actually pretty hard. If we all think back to our
Yes,
milestones in life, we
it is.
probably have
Yep.
a few ugly ones in middle school. Um, but I thought, we'll just put her back. And she came to me and said, I don't think the Lord wants me to go back. And I was like, oh, okay, let's pray about that.
You're like, really?
Yeah. I'm like, oh, I'm glad you're listening to the Lord, and let me check in too. so,
That's
so
great.
through that process, again, the Lord said, start a middle school. And again, I said, Lord, please send another teacher. And 2 weeks later, I had another middle school teacher. So it's encouraging to hear that your middle school went well, Lauren, because I am 2 weeks away from going live. They're literally putting the bathroom in the second building as we speak with an excavator outside. And I'm a little like, I hope middle school goes okay. So I feel encouraged.
Brandy, is yours all girls or all boys or mixture?
Great question. We ended up with a mixture.
Okay.
So we will have, and we did a 6, 7, 8 combo.
Okay.
We will have 3 boys and 2 girls. And of our 15 total students, so now we're K through 8, all but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are girls and 10 are boys, which is
Wow.
interesting. Yeah.
That is very interesting.
Mhm.
That's really interesting. So here's one little funny thing. When we were talking, because I did some consulting, we did some like
Mhm.
like how is this really going to take form, and really like what are you telling people you're doing? So we in the midst of that, you had texted or we were talking and you said, yeah, I think middle school might be a thing. And I remember you saying one day, like, yeah, we just ordered another building. And I was like, can you help me with that? And I'm going to tell you why I'm bringing this up. But so Lauren had a family volunteer their home.
Mhm.
Brandy's like, we have another building on order. And I'm like, where are you? And what are you doing? And what does that
I
look
know.
like?
I was like,
So
wait,
yeah, can you,
another
because
building?
it's pretty phenomenal, but
Yeah.
can you kind of just share a little bit about that too? Because there are people who have land, and there are people that this might not cross their mind at all. And facility is always, I mean, teachers, yes, but there are teachers that are looking.
It's
Facility is a
It's
thing
facility.
when you
I
want
mean,
to do something that's out of the box. It's a
to
big
be
deal.
honest with you, when I think about my 2 girls coming up, like
Mhm.
even my husband, I feel like this was just like the other week. He was like, well, what are we going to do with Bristol? Because she's going into fourth. So like,
Mhm.
he's like, we have 2 years, after this, we have 2 years left. And I was like, oh, I don't know. I don't know if I can think about another pod. And the only reason I said it was because I'm thinking like, oh gosh, where? We need to build
It's
a
a big
building on
deal.
our property. Like, that's the only thing that kind of made me pause.
So Brandy, sure, I'm gonna give you my 2 cents on a couple of things that I get on the bandwagon about. But will you just cast a little bit of vision even around that, because I think it's really phenomenal.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we are blessed to live on 80 acres out here in rural Colorado, northeastern corner of it. And my husband just said, they make these little office buildings that fold out from a Connex box. So basically, like, think of a shipping container, and then essentially it shows up in that shape with a glass door on the front and some windows in it. And then you basically fold out the sides, that turns into your floor. And then these walls pop up, and then the ceiling folds out from on top of that Connex box, and you essentially have a building. Um, Not a large building, but a building, and it has a bathroom built into it and a little kitchenette. And then you have to like hardwire it in, and then you got to run, you got to run electrical, got to run plumbing. But
What?
we just positioned it close to all of that on our current property, if that makes sense. And so that's what we did with the first one. And then with the second one, I was just going to bring in the same size building, but then all of a sudden I had a lot of kids. And so I was like, oh my goodness, what do I do? And we joke about it because there was a Pizza Hut for sale about 5
Yeah.
years ago in town. And my husband, every time we drive by, he'd be like, if the Lord ever has you start that school, you probably need that Pizza Hut. And I'm like, no, there's something about having kids on the farm.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
great. And maybe, but there's just something about having kids like come out to the country, see the corn growing, deal with the
Yeah.
chickens, play with the goats, right? Like it sounds like you might be something similar,
Yeah.
Lauren.
Similar, yeah.
Yep.
And so I said, no, let's just put the first one on our property. So we did that, and we ordered the next one. Well, that one wasn't big enough. So praise God, my husband's a great fabricator. He's like, I'm going to get you two and we're going to figure out how to put them together. And they just accomplished that last week. Like they are
Wow.
together, they're in their laying floor right now and they're putting the bathroom in. So
That's
that's kind of, and it's
encouraging.
interesting because I actually thought, I thought about moving into town because there are some buildings, like a commercial buildings for
Yeah.
available right now. But I've been praying about that. And just last week, a new mom came that's wanting to pre-register for next year's kindergarten, which I was like,
See,
oh
this is
goodness.
what starts happening. Yeah.
um, she said she was standing in the classroom that was just put together and the floor wasn't done. I mean, it's still messy, right? It's not even a classroom yet. And she looked out the windows and she goes, there's something about knowing my kid's going to come to school and look out the window and see corn growing. That
Yeah.
feels right and feels like God.
It does. It makes a difference. Like we have a beekeeper that comes to our
Oh, yeah.
property. There's gardens, on site that they plant. They have chores every morning
Love
where
it.
they have to feed the bees, feed the cats, feed the dogs, feed the chickens. They incubated and
Mm,
hatched chickens and grew them all last year, and now they're on the property and get to take the eggs home. So that really is it's not like that's the whole day, right? But that
mhm,
really is, there's a piece of that ownership and, being back to the roots
mhm,
of, God's creation and cultivating that and, appreciating it and taking care of it. And so I agree with you. I think you could definitely have a building, like a corporate building, and it would be fine. And I've thought about that.
mhm,
But
Yep.
I think that's what gives me the pause is it's like, no, but this is what makes this so sweet. Like it's a real schoolhouse. And I'd have to think about doing that at my own house,
mhm.
for my upcoming middle schoolers. And so you're right. It is, there's something about it that's different. It hits different when it's on the land.
And what I love about just this conversation is that's the beauty of a pod and not
Mhm.
getting into the whole like just taking a group of children and a group of families and saying what is the vision that we have like-minded. I mean, like-minded in Christ, right?
Mhm.
But like-minded in terms of what we want to expose or not expose our children to. And that could be, a group of kids that love science and they're going to do a STEM pod.
Right.
It could be, a group of kids that are, in the inner city and there is an office space and you
Mhm.
need one office for 8 kids to sit
Yeah.
around a conference table. And we're going to, read the classics together. Like it can be formed around the
Mhm.
thing that's important to that group of people without having to take on just, masses and masses of administrative work. It is administrative, which we're going to talk about the pod packet in a minute. There's that piece. I mean, it's a business, it's
Yeah.
a school, there are other people involved. When you are involved with other people's children, parents often lose their mind. It's just like
Yeah.
you're having to take that on and figure out the structure about how you're going to go about it. But the beautiful thing is you can get an office in an office building.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be
Mhm.
in someone's basement, it could be in a prefab building if you have property. And that's what's great. I mean, the entire time until 2020 for 10 years with even the school that we started that was not a pod, we were in a jankety office building
Yeah.
that we all laugh about, that it was like a rat maze to try to get in because every year we'd get more students and we just pop through a wall and go to the next office. And the kids laugh about it. They're like, we're squeezing through walls, but it served the purpose.
Hmm.
I'm going to just get one little plug in here because I can't stand it. Um, Churches,
Mm.
Yeah.
pastors, people that are in churches that can have access to your pastor. The thing that prevents most families from doing something creative is space. And we
Mhm.
have huge church buildings that sit closed and locked often 6 days out of the week. And when we opened up our second location of a tiny little school, the second one was we went to 24 churches. 24 churches and said, can we have 4 rooms for 2 years to get this off the ground? And we were told no and had to delay for an entire year, right?
Wow.
Until a church finally came to us because a huge church that their families were saying, we want this. We're asking. And the church's like, we don't want to do it. We're not getting into that. However, here's someone who's done it before. We'll allow someone to use some space. It's all that's needed. And that's now growing into a school that's going to add a high school now and it's going and blowing. But my point is there are like pastors and congregations, when you're hearing this as a student, go and ask the
Yeah.
pastor and the elders of your church to say, we don't even need you to be involved, and we'll pay a little rent, or we'll pay the cleaning fee, or we'll pay to have everything painted at the end of the year. But can we have some space to do something that helps our kids grow in Christ 6 days a week or 4 days a week? Building space is really important. And so being creative and innovative, not just about what you're going to be teaching the students, but where you go, is part of the journey. Wouldn't you all
Well,
agree?
and can I add one more thing here?
Yeah.
The other thing too is this, one thing we're doing different this year, you can collaborate. And what I mean by that is this year for science specifically, we found an amazing science academy here locally that she has been running it for 20 years. She has an insane reputation in the homeschool community and a full science lab in her basement. And so we tested it at the end of last year, took the girls out, see what they thought. It was amazing. Yes, it's taken a little bit of work for the moms because now we've had to create a Wednesday morning carpool where a mom signs up each week to get the girls and drive them out. But now on Wednesdays, all day, right after math until the end of the school day, they are going to a full science program, science lab, and also doing art. And so we were able to completely remove that teacher this year, not have to have a science teacher. And they're getting that additional, middle school, they get that feel of like, oh, I'm going to a different location. I'm doing something bigger. I'm doing something more mature. So there's so much
Yeah.
collaboration you can also do to make your pod really, really cool and different without you having to do all the legwork in every area.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Did you have something else, Brandy? Were you going to say something?
Well, it just kind of
Just wanna make
stemmed into Lauren's thought there. Like, I agree, the collaboration we're just even having with our local school district has been healthy.
Yeah.
And then even the collaboration of the parents coming into the pod, like that actually took me by surprise, and I don't know why it did, because it's the Lord, but moms bringing in multiple kids, so then tuition gets expensive, right? And then all of a sudden they're like, well, I'm really good at finance. Do you
Yes.
like managing the books? And I'm like, actually, I don't. So if you would like to take that on, that'd be great. And we can exchange that for tuition. And then another mom's very good at the making it pretty, right? So like, I feel like I could make it very tactical, but then she can dress it up. And she's done a phenomenal job with our logo and with our vision and mission that we worked through with you guys, through our consulting with you. And she just made it beautiful, right? Like come to life for the school. And so that is actually, I almost have found that to be more rewarding, is like, wow, Lord, you're pulling together families where the talents that you gave them are actually going to be used. And then that's going to be the community. That part I've actually probably liked the most, to be honest, is just seeing God work in every family and in every mom, and then bringing that together. That part's cool.
But
And I think that sort of
hard?
happens, like if when someone steps out to pioneer, to kind of, I always used the example of a pioneer, in talking, like, I'll take the machete and I'll cut the path and get scratched. If someone wants to come with, it would just be awesome. And like, even in maybe a more organized school setting, just even offering working scholarships that say, we need someone who has the gift set that you have. We'd love for your student to come, and that is actually a trade-off. It makes it super affordable, and they might not be the one to organize from the top down or support from the bottom up. That might not, they don't have the piece of property, or they don't have the operational background, but there is something that they have that you don't want to do, that I didn't want to do, and not even can't. I mean, you do, ask Lauren, you do not want me doing anything with technology. I mean, we're not going anywhere if that is dependent upon me, right? That or geometry. You don't want me talking about geometry.
That's the body working together as the body, which is what the Lord calls us to do, be the body. And I think that is the beautiful part of this. It's like letting everybody use the gifts that the Lord blesses, that the Lord has blessed them with, to come together as a full, team. And I just think that's so beautiful.
Yeah, it's great. Well, let's just sort of as we start to wrap up, let's talk about the pod packet actually just for a minute. Lauren, you and I and Catherine worked on this
Yeah.
from our various perspectives, and Brandy, you were able to utilize it, I think, a little bit. I would love to hear your perspective, but let's just talk about what the pod packet is and what it isn't. And if I'll let you take the lead on that, just from an operational standpoint, because I think some of the questions would be more like, what are the parts and why did we do it? So,
Mhm.
do you want to just take a stab at that, and I can add a little bit, and then I'd love to get Brandy's take on why that is or isn't beneficial for someone who maybe is thinking about doing this.
Yeah, so we came together because, like Brandy has shared with us, people started being interested.
Mhm.
I have moms that are like, wait, tell me what you're doing. Wait, tell me what you're doing. And you can just tell, like, it's piquing people's interest, but it can feel overwhelming. And so Catherine and Suzanne and I got together. So Catherine is the friend I was talking about earlier, that her business placed the teachers, that's what she does, in homeschool families. So she has a lot of experience in that. Suzanne has lots of experience in education and starting schools, right? And consulting. And then I, really not having the background in education like them, but I'm the one that came along as the lead parent and helped operationally put the pod together. So the three of us put our heads together and said, okay, let's dump all of our knowledge into this packet and give people a framework for how they can go and do this themselves. And so essentially, we collected everything that we had gone through that first year, from teacher placement to contracts to finances to block schedules to life skills to how do you interview families, or what does that look like? How do you find families? How do you do interest meetings? All these things that would go into having a pod. And we put it together into a packet. And now we even have an online course where you can purchase that and go through it yourself, and you have all the framework you need to put together your own pod.
So and we added some video to it and a little bit of course to it, and honestly, even some touch points. If you want to know more, a little bit more consulting about your vision mission, a little bit more consulting about branding, a little bit more consulting about the business side of it and how to set up an LLC. If you need a little bit of help with how do you find teachers and just ideas, then Catherine can be available. So there are other things that you can add to this, but what we wanted to do was keep it super affordable, keep it so it really was a sort of a step by step of just things to think about. It's not telling you you have to create the pod that was created. It's more just an idea of, here are the things that you would want to think through and maybe invite people in, and a way to organize. Make
That's
sure that there's a parent who's involved and engaged and helping lead. There are templates so
Yep.
that you don't have to do the same schedule. But here's a template if you want to, do a mock schedule. So the idea was really like to keep it affordable. You don't have to go through a whole year long or 2 year long thing about how to become like the other pod. It's just helping you take what you're starting to think about and put legs to it. So Brandy, you were off the ground a little bit, and then we did some consulting about what is the real vision and the real mission, and what are the values, because that's how you really build a culture.
Yeah.
So we did that, but then was the pod packet that's a piece that you sort of added to it? Did you find that to be helpful, and if so, like where did that kind of fit into your journey?
Yes, I did. The consulting work was great. Just to touch on that real quick, Suzanne, with the really aligning the mission, the vision, and the core values, because that helped us identify if the families were a fit
That's
So
that were coming
critical.
in the spring, and it helped me identify if the new teacher was a fit. And then I've also had parents say, how are you going to hold the teachers accountable? And I was able to take those core values and the work we
Good.
did to do their reviews and say, well, this is how we're going to do it. And that really was kind of the game changer, I think, for a lot of parents to go, oh, you've actually put time and energy and thought into this. So that is an amazing process to walk through with you. And I would highly recommend anybody that's thinking about or feeling the nudge to do that. In regards to the pod packet, that is also excellent. In our situation, we had already technically launched. And
Right.
so as I was reading through it, it was very affirming. Like, okay,
right.
yep, we did that. Okay, yep, we did that. What I'm really excited about in the packet that we have not done, because we were so small last year and this year we're quite a bit bigger, is the operational piece as far as managing it. So the part two,
Yep.
Yeah.
with the teacher reviews and the parent reviews and the student reviews and making that more of a process. I tend to be very entrepreneurial and kind of like, okay, we did it. Moving on to the
Yeah.
next thing, the next
Like
shiny gold
wing it. Yeah.
coin. Yeah. And so I feel like that's going to help me as the founder hold some
Mhm.
accountability to
Yep.
making sure that we're following through with what we said we were going to follow through with. So I'm really intrigued by running through part two of that packet. And then
Yeah.
as I was looking through part one, just in the last couple weeks, because we're getting ready to launch, I was like, ooh, if I would have done it like they said, I wouldn't be getting 6 phone calls this week, right? So there are some components of like, it's very well written and very organized. And honestly, if you haven't done a pod and you're feeling the nudge, you probably could just step by step that thing and it would be amazing. Um, I tend to be a little more flighty. So when I went back through it, I was like, oh, I wish you would have done that and that. The other
Yeah.
piece of the pod packet that really helped me was the tuition piece, because that
Yeah.
everybody wants this and it's a beautiful thing, but it does take some funds.
Yeah. It costs
And
money.
every state's different. And, I've been exploring on the phone with all kinds of folks on, can you get state funding? Do you want state funding? I mean, there's so many different varieties, and depending on which state, some of you guys do have choice, and Colorado's just not there yet. So, um, but all that to be said, it helped. I come from a business background, so you got to break even at least.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But it helps kind of put it in a school perspective, not like a business, not necessarily just a P&L perspective, right? Like
That's
it's not
right.
just about the profit and loss. It's how do you take the resources that we're offering your children, and what is the value that brings, and then how do you help families get there? So that piece was very pivotal for us in our next season. I'm grateful for that.
What
Yeah,
I
it's
love.
interesting. My husband's a business guy and finance guy. And after, doing a school for a decade, he would tell you it is not like any other business anywhere in any shape, form, or fashion. It's its own animal. It's on its own schedule. I mean, what other business do plan the budget in October and you don't know until July if you have the students to walk the budget out? It's tricky. And so just knowing sort of how to think about it and what to expect was really our hope, that
Yeah.
that we're at least giving you the things to think about, and then how you move forward with it is how it should fit what your heart is. And
Yeah.
so, anyway, that's sort of what that is. Lauren, did you have anything else on that?
Yeah, I would just add, I love, honestly, Brandy, hearing that, I don't love it necessarily for you, but I love the kind of confirmation to us of hearing you went back and you're like, oh man, I wish I would have done
Yeah.
that. Because I can tell you, we did not do it all perfectly the first year, right? But we learned so
Much.
much, so much. And so we wrote that on the
Mhm.
end of the first year, right? Like we were about complete. And so we really tried to put a lot of intentionality into, man, what worked, what different, what didn't, what would we change? And I'll tell you the one thing I will add that we did this year, and it has been a game changer for you're the founder. For me, I mean, I'm the lead parent. I wouldn't consider myself the founder of the school, but we formed a board,
Mm.
and that has been so amazing, and not like so intense board like some people would think, but there's 5 of the 11 moms on the board, and it's the some of the original moms that started the school, and that has been so beautiful because it has alleviated, like everyone has a role now. Everyone kind of has a
Yeah.
title, everybody's taking on big pieces, and so it's not all falling on just a few people. And it's helped as we've gone into this year because we started our planning meetings way further
Mhm.
out. We had like a board meeting every month, leading up to the school year. And I'll have to tell you, our orientation is Thursday. So orientation is Thursday, we start on Monday. And just the difference this year compared to last year with that board, knowing all the mistakes that we made last year that, are obviously in the pod packet, what's worked really well. It has been very different, very smooth sailing
It's
in so
great.
many ways. And so I just loved hearing you went back and you're like, oh yeah, I do. I wish I would have done that,
Yeah.
because we did that too, which then translated into the pod packet.
Yeah, yeah. It's just part of innovation, right?
That's
Is
right.
that's what innovation is I'm gonna start where I am and do what I know to do, and we can clean it up as we go. I mean, that's what's happening is people
Right.
are deciding that innovation is okay, and let's give it a go. They're our children. God's entrusted them to us. He will equip us. So it's just a matter of some courage and vision and seeing what God's going to do. So I want to wrap up. I'm going to give you all both an opportunity to say one sentence. If you had one sentence that you could say to encourage someone who might be listening and their little spirit is getting stirred up here, what would you say to the mom or dad that's listening and maybe considering a change? Any thoughts?
Thoughts, but not a sentence.
Well, you can't do a
Hard.
paragraph. We're going to wrap it up tight, but you can maybe do 2 sentences.
I think I'll go first if that's okay, Lauren, unless you're ready.
No, great.
I think for me, I just keep it simple. Spend
Yeah.
time with God, listen to him, obey him, and then trust him.
It's awesome.
If you can do that, it's going to be okay. Yeah.
It's awesome. Yeah.
No, I agree. That's kind of like my core message of just walk in fierce obedience, even when it's scary.
Mm-hmm.
But I would also say, like, have courage to be a pioneer parent. And I recently wrote a chapter on this. And so I think it's just heavy on my heart. But have courage to pioneer the way and listen to the Lord and walk obediently into what he's asking you to do. And you don't need to do it in your own strength. You know, he will equip you if he's called you to it.
Awesome. Well, friends, thanks so much for joining me today as we just, we wrap up this season. And I really, at this point, people are starting to think about the upcoming year. And I really wanted to end with stories that would be encouragement for them, but also casting some vision to say, what's next? It might not be the same thing that you've done. So I so appreciate both of you all being on and just sharing your hearts and your story and the successes, really, the fruit that's coming, and it's good fruit. So thank you for what you're doing, and thanks for being on today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, parents, I hope you enjoyed that conversation. My goal in that really was to let you hear from a couple of mamas who stepped out in faith, and you heard their story. Neither one of them were thinking about it. Neither one of them had a background in it. Neither one of them really jumped all in the first moment that they heard the stirring. They really were a little bit hesitant, and yet they did follow the prompting that God gave them, and there's fruit that has just been beautiful. And so whether you're being stirred to do something different or not, really just as parents and being informed parents with what's going on culturally, there's so many different ways to get involved and more involved with what's going on in your community, what's going on in the school environments, creating new things, and just being around the dinner table talking to your kids. So I hope this season of the Informed Parent Podcast has really inspired you to step in, ask some questions, get involved, maybe look at some vetted resources that we've offered you, and that you will see the fruit of your work and your diligence in stepping into biblical parenting in your children's lives that just inspire you to keep going. Again, we started with saying parenting is hard. I'm going to end with saying that parenting is hard in every stage because it's worthy work. Right? We're forming human beings. And so stay in it, stay with it, do the hard work. You got to pick your heart anyway. So the biblical parenting is so key. So I hope as we wind this season down, the Informed Parent Podcast helps you parent with purpose, disciple with direction, and leave an intentional legacy.